Hiya, I'm Bruce Fummey. Thanks for clicking on this video. If you were expecting a visit to a fantastic city to hear about a baker's son from Bathgate who through education, invention, hard work and caring went on to become a celebrated doctor and scientist and whose funeral was attended by thousands, then you've come to the right place. Because this video is about James Young Simpson. If the people, places and events in Scottish history interest you, then the subscribe button's at the bottom right hand side of the screen. If you'd like to help support the channel, then there's a link in the description below. You can even join the National Trust. But for now, let me tell you a story. 1811 is roughly halfway between the Battle of Trafalgar and the Battle of Waterloo. Can you imagine the brutal injuries sustained in those battles? Limbs ripped off, men screaming in agony, gangrenous infections, amputations of appendages with nothing to dull the pain but brandy, as you hear the scrape and feel the vibration of a ship surgeon sawing through your very bone. Ooh. On June the 7th, 1811, a Bathgate woman and a baker's wife gave birth to her 8th child without the wonders of modern pain relief. He would be called James Young Simpson. He seemed like an unusually intelligent lad, so his parents pushed the boat out for him to get an education. He went to Edinburgh University at 14, initially to study arts, but then medicine. Now he almost gave up when his dad died, but he went back to Edinburgh to please his family, who'd sacrificed so that he could make use of his talents. Simpson did indeed go on to have a hugely successful medical career. He qualified at 18, but couldn't take up his degree until age 20. He specialised in obstetrics. He was elected President of the Royal Medical Society of Edinburgh at age 24. The University of Edinburgh Medical Faculty was the finest in the world at the time, and its chair of midwifery was the first of its kind in Britain. Simpson took on that role at the age of 28. He took obstetric forceps, invented by another Scot, William Hunter, and he improved them. In 1848, he pioneered the suction tractor, the forerunner of the vacuum extractor. Now that might not sound much, but where would pregnant women today be without a vacuum vaginal extractor? I'd love to tell you, but I'm essentially a 14-year-old boy trapped inside a 56-year-old man's body, and there's no way that I could get out without laughing. Unless a vaginal vacuum extractor. The point is, this guy was incredible. It was he who advocated for measuring fetal heart rates. He was one of the first to use medical statistics. He argued that puerperal fever, I can't even pronounce it, it doesn't matter. It was the same thing as something that, how would I know? I'm not a doctor, I'm a storyteller. The point is that he focused on and campaigned for modernisation and sanitation of hospitals. He suggested medical attendants should wash their hands with chlorine to reduce the spread of infection. He came up with a new way of controlling blood loss during surgical operations. If you think more folks should know about James Young Simpson, then give this video the thumbs up and share it when we're finished. The point is that he did loads of things. But the thing for which he's remembered most is the introduction of the use of chloroform as an anaesthetic. At the battles of Trafalgar and Waterloo, surgeons had to work as fast as they could so as to finish the job quickly whilst patients writhed and screamed in pain. Then the surgeon went on to the next patient who had listened as he waited his turn. Speed of operation saved lives. Now, there was another Scottish surgeon, Robert Liston, who was famed for his speed of amputations. He once amputated a leg in 28 seconds, but accidentally cut off his assistant's fingers. And both the patient and the assistant died of sepsis. On another occasion, he amputated a leg in 30 seconds, but accidentally took off the patient's testicles in the process. Anyway, James Young Simpson wanted a way to reduce pain during childbirth that was easier than cutting off a bloke's testicles. In 1799, the celebrated experimenter Humphrey Davy had first used nitrous oxide to relieve pain. In 1846, William Morton had demonstrated the use of ether. Early on in 1847, Simpson himself had used ether as an anaesthetic during a difficult delivery, but it had unfortunate side effects like nausea and irritation of the lungs. Simpson wanted to find a solution that was more effective and less problematic. Come with me. He was living here at 52 Queen Street in Edinburgh. You can probably just about see the carving on the wall. And he and a couple of his mates, okay, let's call them assistants, would meet up at this house to sniff various chemicals so as to find out their effects on the human body. We've all been to these parties. In fact, I think I was at one in this street. Anyway, one night they decided to use chloroform. This was an organic compound that occurred in nature. CH3L3, if you must know. It's a methyl group with 3 chlorine atoms replacing 3 of the hydrogen atoms. You get? It had recently been produced in the lab and found to work as an anaesthetic in animals. So James and his pals sat round one night and had a sniff. They felt lightheaded, euphoric, and then they collapsed on the floor. It was the next morning before they woke up. And as soon as he did, James declared, "I'm doing that again." Because you see, scientific experiments have to be repeatable and predictable. Now, it's worth mentioning that this was around the same time as the astonishing James Clerk Maxwell was growing up just down the road from here. His statue's in George Street parallel to this. I'll leave a link at the end to my video on James Clerk Maxwell. You really need to know about this incredible Scot. Anyway, look, let's go somewhere quieter. Come. Anyway, like lots of scientific discoveries, there was a bit of luck and guesswork involved in Simpson's experiment. Because if they'd taken too little, they wouldn't have fallen asleep. Too much, and it could have killed them. This was in the summer of 1847. On November the 8th, he used chloroform for the first time in obstetrics. A week later, he gave his first demonstration of the use of chloroform as an anaesthetic, and he published a paper a few days after that. He also published an account on the front page of the Scotsman. It was possibly paranoia, but Simpson felt that he always had to battle against the authorities. Politically, he was a Whig. Think Liberal before the Labour Party. The kind of radical that might have been born a baker's son in Bathgate, you know the type. He felt he had to fight against the Tory medical establishment. But the horrific pain involved in surgical procedures was often a barrier to people seeking medical remedy. Telling the public direct through this newspaper article would mean that they would exert pressure for this new wonder therapy. So, chloroform began to be widely used as an anaesthetic, but bizarrely, there was opposition to it being used in the area of childbirth where Simpson specialised. Why? This was Victorian Britain. Many religious types believed that pain in childbirth was part of the punishment visited on the human race because of the sin committed by Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. God intended that women should suffer in childbirth, and so reducing the pain of labour would be against God. Somehow, I think that if slamming your scrotum in a car door was a consequence of original sin, there'd be a sound theological explanation as to why it was no longer necessary. What do you think? And then in 1853, Queen Victoria availed herself of the benefits of chloroform during the birth of her 8th child. And if there was anyone that had more influence than God, it was Queen Victoria. Form an orderly queue, ladies. In actual fact, James Young Simpson was appointed as Queen Victoria's doctor when she was in Scotland. He was showered with numerous other accolades, honorary degrees, memberships of societies, and well-done backslapping titles. This baker's lad from Bathgate was raised to the title of baronet, and he was the first person to be knighted for services to medicine. But the measure of a life isn't in titles, it's in the esteem in which you're held by the public. And when this Bathgate lad died at 58, he was offered a place for burial in Westminster Abbey. But his family said no. The great and the good had to make do with a bust. They say 100,000 lined the streets. and 2,000 followed the cortege as James Young Simpson was brought here to Warriston Cemetery in Edinburgh to be laid to rest. The baker's lad had done good. I'm not saying he was the greatest scientist ever. For that, you'll need to watch my video on James Clerk Maxwell. It'll make you feel proud. Just click the link here. If you want to tell people about James Young Simpson, as I think you should, you can do that by sharing this video and giving it the thumbs up. How many doctors can be a llama alive? Cheery and Rasta.